from our Zero to Launch panel, the guys are going to go over how to take everything that you learned and go from zero, which is like having an idea about what kind of bot you want to create, to taking tangible steps to actually having a bot. And at the end of this panel, we want to help the rubber hit the road. So I also shared the links. So if you want to join our workshop tomorrow, we actually do the thing that we're going to be talking about right now, and we design a bot, and then on Thursday we develop it. So discover, design, develop. And without further ado, I'll jump off and I'll let you guys take it away.
Is this the last panel of the day?
That's right. And then after this is happy hour. So I hope you brought something.
So we can have a little bit of fun.
You can have a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Stefan.
Oh, you're welcome. Should I stay on? You guys are.
Yeah.
I'll hang out. I'll ask questions.
All right. So, I'll kick it off. Welcome everybody to the Zero to Launch panel. We have Dustin and Rob from Bot Copy, correct? And I'll let so a little bit about myself. I president of Mobile Monday. Run a very large mobile developer community across the U.S. And Stefan and I have definitely been friends for a couple of years and collaborate together on our different ecosystem engagements. But thanks, Stefan, for having me moderate. I'll let Dustin. How about you introduce yourself? Start with you.
Yeah, I'm Dustin, CEO of Bot Copy. We're a front-end web chat and mobile app solution for Dialogflow and other NLU coming soon. That's me in a nutshell. And then Rob is one of my partners in crime. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Rob.
Sure. Hey, I'm Rob Lubo, CMO at Bot Copy and a co-founder and bot designer.
Cool. And Stefan, I guess you need no introduction. So,
yeah, I'm the host.
So we have kind of a short time, but let's just kind of get started.
Oh, we got one more.
oh, Mira, sorry.
No worries.
Mira,
sorry. I was in the wrong backstage area, and then I'm here, so I'm so sorry about that. But hi, I'm Mira. I'm the product manager for conversational AI at GoDaddy. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Mira, you used to work. Was it last time we were on a panel together? You used to work at Mad Mimi as well, right?
Yes.
So Rob, who I'd mentioned last time, was one of the co-founders and lead investors at Mad Mimi as well.
That is correct.
That's awesome.
Yes, I was the initial seed investor in Mad Mimi, and did a lot of the writing and marketing advising all along the way. So, yay for us.
Yay, Mad Mimi. It's still kicking. If you guys want to go check it out, it's still around. It's now a GoDaddy company. But
I know. My mother uses it for her newsletter. So
if anyone needs some great email marketing, check out Mad Mimi.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to the first question. And I talked to Dustin over the weekend a little bit about like how to approach this, and I kind of wanted to approach this like one is taking the knowledge from the panel. So if I'm just starting out in thinking about developing a bot, like what are the challenges in just like what are going to be my challenges in getting started, right? So what should I be expecting to be dealing with having, whether it's a platform selection to just getting started. So I just wanted to cover those bases there. What should we be looking out for?
I think one of the biggest challenges that a lot of people face is how do you get the data to make decisions about how to form things? Like, what are your customers saying? How are they contacting you? Where are they? I think that data piece that is so important to informing a really good decision and a good groundwork is a real big challenge for a lot of people in a lot of
understanding your audience and their pain points, right? Okay.
Yeah,
Dustin? Yeah.
I think most people have trouble figuring out where the hell start. They're kind of all over the place. It seems like a chatbot can do all these cool things, but it's like hiring an employee, and sometimes you want to be very focused on what that employee is going to do in the very beginning instead of saying, "Hey, we want you to solve all the problems here." So where was it at GoDaddy? Like, where did you guys? First off, I pride GoDaddy on you guys have amazing customer support. We use GoDaddy, and I love the fact that you have a chat experience. I can also jump on a phone call with you. But as a company that kind of leads the like really good customer support, where did you guys start? And was that like hard for you guys to figure out where exactly which department? Because you've got technical stuff, you've got cPanel stuff, you've got like even heavy back duty or back end stuff, and then you have like kind of easy like just like purchasing the domain. So how did you figure out where to start?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I said that was a challenge, because that was one of our challenges.
Yeah.
Was figuring out what's gonna have impact and where do we want to have impact. But we kind of bootstrapped it in that we didn't have any kind of central data that is telling us how customers are interacting with us, but we went to all of these different places where customers were interacting, and we just grabbed what we could and then manually sifted through it. And it was a real big manual effort, but I think the result of that has laid a groundwork for us to be able to focus in a really high volume and a good high visibility place, and that then we're now at the point where we're kind of stretching out into those outlier areas.
When you first were looking at the like all the data that was coming in, was the team looking at, if we solve this, it'll save the company this much money because it usually goes to a live agent, or was it more on customer satisfaction? Like, we're getting all these questions, we could answer these people in real time. Like, what was the kind of ROIs that you were looking at?
Yeah, our focus was mainly in customer experience. We didn't have that was the major driver of all the decisions we made in the beginning. We even had a discussion real early on, like, what should we do? Should we do sales or support when we're looking into this conversational AI thing? Like, where should we focus? And support was 100%.
We found that every company, like all shapes and sizes, big enterprise companies, public companies, to kind of smaller like startups, are like use bot copy, and they all have kind of different objectives and goals. But we're always, instead of trying to guess everybody's, we always just tell people to figure out your objective. Like, what is this? What's the best thing that this bot can do for you right now? Kind of go from there, and that's the biggest challenge. It takes some time. Like, before you choose the tools that you're going to use to build the AI or chat situation, figure out, like, map it out. Like, what do you want it to do? And look at like some hard data that you already have. Like, you can look at the time you spend on phone calls and how happy people are after the phone call and how much money that's costing the company. And it takes a little work to analyze all that and figure it out, but that's kind of like the key insight to help you figure out where to start.
Interesting. It's so we do have some challenges getting started. What are some of the best practices that a team should follow when starting to execute a bot development? What are some of the things, kind of like top 5 best practices a team should follow in the design and creation of it?
One thing I always recommend is kind of my top one, and Rob kind of agrees, and then also thinks people should add a few things to it. But I think having a really sound default in the very beginning, Like, understand that when you're just getting started, your bot is going to mess up, and it's okay. You know, you're going to hire an employee, and they're not going to know what to say all the time. But usually that employee has enough common sense to say, I don't really understand right now, or I'm new. Let me get the best answer for you and get back to you, and then figure out a way to do that. And understand that that information is actually really good information for you to collect and learn from. And even though that the bot messes up, it's still kind of positive to kind of grow from. But having a really solid, and multiple of them, default responses, and not the same thing every time, because that kind of gets annoying for the end user. But having kind of a backup when the bot doesn't understand, I think that's, in the very beginning at least, good practice. That's my recommendation. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes we've been in a situation where Dustin wanted to put up a bot that really didn't know anything. Its whole purpose was to start this sort of Darwinian process. So it's like a blank slate, and you ask it a question, and it says, "Sorry, I'm still learning. I don't know, but I'll hand you over to someone who does." But then they have that question, and then next time they'll know how to answer it. So that's starting from zero. I tend to feel like, let's start from like 5 instead of 0. Like, we know if you're building a customer service bot, for instance, like GoDaddy was doing, that let's just imagine this manual, real thick manual, like 80% of the questions are coming in, around 20% of the answers, and then there's probably like 5 or 6 questions that make up the lion's share of the questions you get. So why not focus on those for the biggest bang for your buck? So launch your first bot knowing a few things, but also, finesse it in a way so that the user knows, what the bot can do. So like if you're dealing with a store clerk or something, you don't expect the clerk to know as much as the manager, but you definitely expect the clerk to know as much as the clerk should know. So this bot needs to make it clear what it knows and what it doesn't know, and then proceed reasonably from there. Of course, what the user doesn't know is that this bot is going to be smarter next time, and the next time, and the next time, and slowly close that gap until it knows everything. So I think that's the best practice.
I think there's another best practice about connecting to a human no matter what. Like the very first iteration of a bot that we put out there, it said, "I don't know, please call this number." And that's a terrible experience because nobody wants to leave where they are. Like, they're interacting here. I don't want to have to then go change mental models of what I'm doing and go find my phone or whatever it is, right? So that would also be my, like, regardless of whether it's a know nothing bot or a know little bit bot, having that bot truly connect you to like the help that you need is crucial.
I totally agree with that, and I think it's one of the biggest things in the very beginning that companies overlook is the amount of time you actually save the company by doing that really well. Like handing off not just to any person, but the right person, and not having to go through this, for the user being on like hold with jazz music or something like that in the background, and then getting some person that's not the right person, then jazz music again, and then the right person, and loops back to the other person. But that's a nightmare, I think, for everyone. And doing it really well, and whether it's a phone number or a different phone number, you save everybody a lot of time doing that. And I think it's important because everybody overlooks that as a KPI. Is they're like, oh, the bot should just know everything, and if it doesn't, then it's a fail. But also, if the bot can get to the right person, the right message, understand the context of the relationship, the conversation, then I think that's a big win as well.
Another best practice would be a hello. Is having the bot have a separate answer to a hello. Even because you don't need to know anything about what your customers are going to say to have that, and they are going to say that, and it gives you an opportunity to reinforce and reset expectations of what they're interacting with and what they should expect from it. So I would also add that one.
How about UI? If I'm doing, because sometimes, I mean, my first experiences with bots was the command line, right, interface. I'm like, hello, who are you? What? I mean, you just start like just throwing out phrases to see what would happen. My favorite being, I think, the Chuck Norris bot. I think was one of the first ones I interacted with.
Nice.
And you always kind of remember your first, like, oh, and it was just, it was kind of funny, but yeah, talk about UI, because I know we've progressed over, command line to then buttons, and then I think even that it's like maybe it's religion, right? for some bot designers of like they prefer one or the other. Thoughts on that, at least for best practices?
Yeah, so that's bot copy in a nutshell. Is we're the UI for a website for dialogue flow. So we see, the beautiful thing is we see people create different experiences. Some choose to use purely NLU, which is awesome. I really enjoy those. Now they're a little harder to build because you don't have the what we call like bumper rails, because you get like little buttons and things like that as suggestion chips. And then we have people building like full kind of decision tree models with the buttons, adding videos and carousels and things like that. And it's really the UI itself is a big piece, and the intelligence behind it, understanding like context. Like if the user comes back for the second time and had a previous conversation about a certain topic, for the UI maybe to open up and introduce themselves, like start the conversation, like how did that work? Let's say they purchased something from the website last time they were there. It could open up and say, how was whatever you purchased? And having these like really cool experiences to also complement like good copywriting and the design is kind of a big part of the game. I know that GoDaddy, you guys have a pretty cool UI as well. It even like detaches from the screen a little bit, which I thought was cool. But it's a big piece. I think a lot of I wasn't in the meetings today, but there's so many different UI options. Bot copy is the kind of web and mobile app, but you also have like Facebook Messenger or voice and SMS, even email to a lot of extent is a chatbot. And they all require different design, and it's kind of fun to look at and plan accordingly.
Yeah, I think there's a similar theme to best practices in UI as best practices at start, which is you have to learn what is gonna work. One of the things we discovered was if we put buttons, people will click on them 90% of the time. So even though we allow for free-form text in there, just by presenting the buttons, we are encouraging a certain behavior. So if we want to encourage one way or the other, then we have that tool, I guess, at our disposal. But, does it work better for you to have an open-ended question at the beginning or a series of topics for the user to choose? I think a lot of it depends on your situation. One, like Dustin mentioned, has very clear guardrails, so it's easier. There's less cognitive load. One gives you much richer data about what your customers need, or you have a lot more to work with. But I think the cool thing about chatbots is that the words are the UI, right? So at the end of the day, what buttons or links or carousels or videos or whatever you have in there is like the way that the words fit together and respond to each other. That is the UI. So your writers are an important, I would say the most important stakeholder in making those kinds of decisions about what they want the customer experience to be.
Yeah. Awesome. And we've seen with bot copy's interface, you can switch up the UI to different shapes, sizes. It can go full screen, all these, all the colors that you could imagine. The input bar can be kind of bubbly, or it can be kind of clean and standard. And we've seen like, it just depends on the industry and really the customer. We've seen really high conversion rates with with more gaming clients with kind of a bubbly and kind of more rounded UI and buttons and things like that, and then more corporate with kind of flatter, more minimalistic, and just kind of get straight to the point and maybe less buttons. But it's fun to look at those experiences and kind of more the UI to kind of fit your brand and all your needs.
Hey, I have a couple more questions that I want to get to. And the next question is really, what goals should I set up, and what are my definitions of success, right? So what should I be putting out there as a definition of success? And also, what should I measure or instrument for data analysis, right? Because that's kind of like part of the design process. Like, okay, there are a lot of unknowns. Right? There's some known unknowns and a lot of unknown unknowns. And then for V1, what should I be looking for to instrument? How do I get the most out of V1 so I can analyze later? Any thoughts?
Well, I'll just chime in real quick. I mean, what kind of goals should you set up? I mean, the goal isn't to use a chatbot. A chatbot is not like a solution in search of a problem. The goal is, in a general sense, you want to reduce expenses, you want to boost revenue or engagement, and you want your users to be happy. Those are your goals. So now to drill down on those, how do you do that? Well, most of the people we deal with are dealing with this pain point where a user is picking up the phone. So there's information that might be available on the website, but sometimes users can't find it, and so they wind up calling. This phone call times 1 million, that's a huge drain of expense, labor, waiting online, all that. So a goal might be to have fewer escalations to a live salesperson. That's probably the most popular goal, I think. Another one might be to, sales lead gen, like, can we capture more email addresses? Can we get to know this person a little bit better with a chatbot? And so if you have a website with a chatbot and you're getting 5 times more lead gen information on this user than you were prior to having the chatbot, that's a pretty powerful goal. We see a lot of that too. So start small. You can't completely end the escalation cycle on every issue, but you can pick 1 or 2, like I sort of repeating myself at the beginning, but pick that 1 or 2 issues that make people pick up the phone and call and see if you can reduce escalation that way. And
what should I look forward to learning from V1? What should I be like? Obviously V1 is going to be like the first iteration.
Okay. So like, Mira said before, like there's a free chat or there's buttons, and you probably want to do a hybrid. So you put in some buttons of what you think are the most popular items, and then you also leave the free chat open in case someone wants to type something in. And that way you learn, what's on people's minds, because there's that NLP aspect. And you also learn, if your hypothesis of those 2 or 3 topics are in fact the ones that people care about, people are clicking on them. If you have 2 or 3 buttons up there and one of them is never getting clicked, maybe it's time to swap that button out for something else. Maybe something that came through the NLP query window, So you're always learning based on the behaviors. But I think you do want those 3 button choices. The ideal opening for me is a very short intro and then 3 button choices, like literally 1 sentence. Like, I'm here to help you with GoDaddy. Choose below or ask me a question. Okay, so you've got 3 choices and you have the option to ask a question. Done. So all you want to know is, what are those 3 buttons going to be? I think that's a really important thing to learn as soon as possible.
Awesome.
I think there's also a difference between like project or program KPI and success, and then bot functionality success, because there's obviously at different levels people are going to be interested in different things, but in order to make anything better, you have to know the like nitty gritty of what's going on in how customers are interacting with like every single intent in your bot. So being able to instrument for customer journey through that so that your designers or engineers or whoever is dealing with the actual functionality of the bot is able to look in and see where people are falling off a flow, or where is something that you expected to work a certain way not working that way, and that's a really crucial piece to instrument, get right. And then that's a big learning of V1 is, with all this stuff that we put in there and all this work that we did, it's probably not right. Not to discourage anyone, just because that is V1. Everything before you have something out there is a hypothesis, and you're going to learn that.
So how big was your V1, Mira? I mean, when we first started as an agency, when we did V1s for big companies, they were enormous mousetraps, very ornate. Just they went in millions of different labyrinthian directions before we even knew really how people were going to react. We learned pretty quick not to do that.
Yeah,
but I'm just wondering, like,
we targeted, but I would say we made the same mistake, that we should have gone smaller than we did. And we would have probably learned faster and, been able to potentially even expand faster if we had that same perspective on it. It's like, go small.
Interesting. So that's like a good,
really cool.
So that's a good best practice then. I mean, that should be on the good practice list of start small and learn, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the project could be too unwieldy, and then you have too many moving parts, and then you're trying to understand.
Yeah, and it's difficult to parse. It's difficult to understand. There's all of these different parts of the data lake that you're looking at in terms of how it's operating, and I think that's a really good. That's the takeaway.
That's in UX, right? You build based on proven demand. You do some tests and you see where people tend to go, and then you build for that desire rather than assuming all their desires ahead of time.
Cool. Hey, Stefan, we're out of time?
Well, you guys can continue, but I just want to let everyone know that the happy hour session is now upon us.
Yeah.
So if you go to sessions, you can go to happy hour, and then you can share your video and audio, and then kind of have this sort of interaction. And you guys can head over there too, continue the dialogue, and people can join and hang out with us. And
thanks for sending the bottle of wine, Stefan. That was awesome. Yeah. But I didn't get a bottle of wine. Well, I want to thank Mira. Thanks for being. I wasn't expecting you. Sorry, I was thought maybe Mira, is she part of the backstage here because I saw I see your data center behind you with all the screens. Anyway, well, thanks. And I think we lost Dustin. Well, thanks, Rob, Dustin, Mira. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mario.
Zero to Launch.